Today I want to respond to a video that I've responded to before, but this time I want to take a different approach. Richard Wolff tries to deny the fact that the world has experienced a drop in poverty. But then he says the world has experienced a drop in poverty because of China, and that's because China is socialist. Let's just take a look and see what he says.
Poverty has gone up, not down. But hey, at least a proportion of people in poverty has gone down, they might say. But what's actually the reason for that? Was it really capitalism that was our knight in shining armor? As a matter of fact, almost all of that reduction in poverty has been in one country, China, not in the countries where American-style capitalism was exported. China accomplished this with massive government industrial spending and social programs that it calls socialist.
You can go watch my previous video to see critiques of some of the things Wolff is saying here, but I want to focus on the China situation. It is true that China stands out as a country that has seen especially remarkable progress. But it is absurd to attribute this progress to socialism and not capitalism. Although China remains under Communist Party rule and has experienced significant socialist influence throughout its history, the pivotal reforms that catalyzed the nation's dramatic economic growth are widely recognized as market-orientated. Wolff's argument here appears to be post hoc, especially when considering historical Marxist rhetoric regarding China's economic transformation. For example, Michael Parenti in 1997 characterized China's shift as sliding down the free market path. The communist takeover of China in 1949 marked a tumultuous period. Anyone or anything considered counter-revolutionary faced swift and severe consequences. According to historian Jean-Louis Margolin, executions in the cities almost certainly reached 1 million. That is, 1/3 of the probable number of liquidations in the countryside. But since at least 5 times as many people lived in the country as lived in the city, we can assume that the repressions were far harsher in urban areas. The impact of these actions was profound, resulting in millions being imprisoned and hundreds of thousands committing suicide. During the land reform initiatives of the early 1950s, between 200 and 240 million acres of land were redistributed. The Great Leap Forward intensified these efforts. The establishment of the first commune in Henan Province's Suping County at Yashan saw over 9,000 households relinquishing not only their private plots, but also their homes and numerous other possessions. So much for that supposed Marxist distinction between personal and private property. Many homes were even dismantled to build communal buildings. Now, Mao claimed all of the violence and chaos that the party caused was justified because he would give the workers a better quality of life than those who came before him. Was it really worth it? In 1957, Mao tasked a group of statisticians to perform detailed studies on the current and past quality of life of the Chinese people. These researchers found that in most cases, the quality of life had declined since 1937. Citizens were malnourished and experienced significant worsening of living expenses, working conditions, and living conditions. Under Mao's regime, poverty, inequality, access to housing, and access to food all declined. Mao's promise to be better than the nationalists had failed. Things didn't improve under Mao after 1957 either. Economic historian Kent Deng has noted that by 1978, the real average wage in the industrial sector was virtually halved from its 1957 level. 2/3 of peasants in 1978 had an income lower than they did in the 1950s, and some even lower than under Japanese occupation. Economist Michael Revillion, a world-class expert on poverty, estimated that 2/3 of China's poverty in 1980 was a direct result of Mao's policies since 1950. These facts completely undermine any argument by leftists that socialism brought China out of poverty. On the contrary, socialism further impoverished China. But is that a surprise to any of us? Even then, all of that was nothing compared to the Great Famine. Calculations vary, but some say up to 45 million perished. Many factors contributed to the famine. These include collectivization, Lysenkoism, the killing of the sparrows, and centrally planned production quotas. Mao did not seem to care much. He continued to seize food from starving peasants, and every step of the way he exacerbated the famine. Had he changed his policy, Professor Felix Wemhauer estimates he could have saved up to 26 million lives. Economist Stephen Radlick granted Mao the highest compliment he deserved by pointing out, in 1976, Mao single-handedly and dramatically changed the direction of global poverty with one simple act. He died. The nation started taking a turn thanks to the effort and ingenuity of a few farmers in Zhaojiang. It was 1978 and China was grappling with the aftermath of Mao's Cultural Revolution and facing severe food shortages. 18 families in Zhaoxing village clandestinely signed a pact to divide communal land into family plots. This bold move, risking death or imprisonment, marked the onset of China's rural reform. This experiment boosted regional production by 600%. This caught the attention of Deng Xiaoping, China's then new leader, who was completely shocked to see this act of rebellion and its incredible results. Since he couldn't argue with the results, he decided to just leave the farmers alone. Thus, a bottom-up liberalization campaign began, completely contrasting with Mao's top-down approach. Liberalization not only revitalized agriculture, but it laid the groundwork for broader economic reforms, including the opening of Shanghai, Guangdong, and Shenzhen to market forces. Deng Xiaoping said he was going to let some people get rich first, and that's exactly what happened. As noted by socialist economist Thomas Piketty, from 1978 to 2015, the income share of the top 10% rose from 27% to 41%, while public property share in national wealth declined from 70% to 30%. Concurrently, the public sector's share in production fell from 80.7% in 1978 to 28.2% in 1999, as the private share sector increased from 19.3% to 71.8%. Additionally, from 1978 to 2002, urban employment saw a dramatic shift. The public sector share dropped from 78.3% to 22.7%. Whereas the private sectors rose from 21.7% to 77.3%, marking a substantial move towards a market-oriented economy with diversified ownership. Private property had finally returned, and economic calculation with it. In 1920, Ludwig von Mises observed that socialist economies were incapable of performing economic calculation. In a capitalist society, capital goods are privately owned, and entrepreneurs sell them to each other, creating a market. Socialism abolishes private property, and thus this market of capital goods cannot exist. Economist Joe Salerno explains, without recourse to calculating and comparing the benefits and cost of production using the structure of monetary prices determined at each moment in the market, the human mind is only capable of surveying, evaluating, and directing production processes whose scope is drastically restricted to the compass of the primitive household economy. Watch this video by Liquid Zulu to learn more. In 1978, 100% of the prices of production goods were set by the state. At this time, the poverty rate was over 90% and rising. By 2004, only 12.5% of prices were set by the state. The poverty rate was 22% and falling. China today engages in a lot of what some call industrial socialism. Many socialist advocates brag that China was able to achieve its current status as an economic and technological superpower because of central planning. But as we now know, China only became successful after abandoning all-out socialism. China's modern industrial policy is not at all what built the nation up from the rubble Mao put it in. As economist Barry Naughton says, between 1978 and about 2005, China's government steadily retreated from its initially all-encompassing control of the economy. Growth accelerated, and comprehensive upgrading took place. New policies began to be initiated in 2006, starting slow and then accelerating. From 2009 through 2020, the government has strongly re-engaged in direct economic intervention, all while the economy has been steadily slowing, even before the coronavirus impact in 2020. China's current industrial package is just too recent to explain China's success over the past several decades. China is abandoning what made it strong, to its own detriment. Government-led poverty alleviation programs rather than economic growth to reduce extreme poverty. The Communist Party and Socialists credit these programs for reducing poverty, but these programs are also far too recent to be the cause behind the historic decline. Even if we just focus on recent years, these policies don't seem to be very effective. A 2022 Chinese study found that the CCP's anti-poverty fund had no statistically significant impact on poverty from 2011 to 2017. There wasn't any evidence for income transfers reducing poverty either. They did, however, find strong evidence that the liberalization of agriculture decreased poverty. Another Chinese study from 2023 found that transfer payments actually decreased incomes because of drops in the labor supply. So once again, it was not socialism that decreased poverty, it was capitalism. So is China socialist today? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. Among its reforms, China established special economic zones, which are characterized by economies that are more market-orientated than those in other parts of the country. Presently, China's economic landscape is highly diverse. varying significantly not only from province to province, but also from city to city. In some areas, state-owned enterprises dominate, accompanied by high corporate tax rates, whereas other regions feature a minimal presence of state-owned enterprises and benefit from low corporate tax rates. Thus, China exhibits characteristics of both socialism and capitalism, with a specific mix depending on the geographic location. In a cross-regional analysis of China's economy, economist Yang Zhang notes, China's high growth over the past 40 years has come from marketization, emerging and booming private sectors, as well as the technology accumulated by the West over 300 years, not from the powerful government and the large state sector. He compared different regions in China, which varied by economic policy. By breaking up China into regions, he was able to see, on average, the more market-oriented reform a province had done, the higher economic growth it had achieved. And the provinces whose economies are more privatized are likely to be more innovative, thus providing definitive proof that China's relative success completely originated from capitalist reforms, despite its government's historic and recent socialist tendencies. China still has a long way to go, to be sure, but life for the average citizen in China is far better than it was under Mao, and it is certainly far better than it would have been had Mao's policies lived past the 1970s.